So here's a question. When did animated movies start selling themselves on their bankable celebrity talent? Jim Carrey. There are people on this spectrum. Jerry Seinfeld. Renée Zellweger. Just show those sharks who's boss. Here I come. Tada. I tell you what's what. And what. Steve Carell. Dr. LaRue. Because it was always like this. For most of the life of feature film animation, it was more analogous to how anime dubs aired on in America today. Career voice talent and non-celebrities and character actors provided the voices, and animated features were sold on pretty much every facet but their celebrity voice talent. And then came somebody, and in a post-Shrek celebrity-driven animated feature world, well, it's not all there is, but in terms of sheer volume, it's most of it. Horrible turn of events. Horrible. But you know where this is going. Shrek might have codified the thing, but it did not kick off the thing. That dubious honor goes to Aladdin. Hello, Aladdin. Nice to have you on the show. Can we call you all? Or maybe just Din. But here's the thing. The big celebrity on whose back Aladdin was marketed did not want this to happen. This current hellscape of James Corden playing Peter Rabbit and Patrick Stewart as the poop emoji. Just doing me duty. This is a hellish mirror house version of what went down with Williams' experience with Disney. Williams did not want to be the celebrity off of which Aladdin was marketed. It's all part and parcel. The whole genie gig. His name being used to market the movie and its tea in merchandise had all created a massive rift between himself and the Walt Disney Company that lasted for years. All because Disney just couldn't resist ignoring this man's request not to be used as a marketing tool for Aladdin. I am your master now. I wasn't afraid of that. This is the story. Now I'm the king of the swingers, oh. With the Disney renaissance of the 1990s and the prestige value that came with being in one of its movies, animated films were rarely the playground of A-list actors and more the territory of relatively unknown character actors and voice actors, with the occasional blister and glister thrown in. For instance, Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings had John Hurt. Well, you have put your foot in it this time. Who are you? The Rescuers snagged Bob Newhart and Ava Gabor. Oh, Bernard Adventure. Got a rope in that Green Acres crowd. I get allergic smelling hay. The Fox and the Hound had Kurt Russell. The same year as I don't give a fuck about your war. We re your president. Okay. Point being that voice casting for animated films was less of a star-studded affair and more of a people you might see on Nick at Night sort of deal. I don't have to ask you what business you're in. Then comes 1986, so The Great Mouse Detective, which was the first animated feature where Eisner and Katzenberg oversaw most of the production and the distribution, and while Mouse Detective had Vincent Price as the world's most extra bitter ex-boyfriend trouble with the chemistry set, old boy. It wasn't what one would call a star vehicle. It did, however, turn enough of a profit to convince its new studio heads that there was still money to be made from Disney's animation division. Enter Oliver and Company, whose cast not only had way more considerable star power, but whose marketing also heavily relied on pushing said cast as a feature of the film. That's Midler, Huey Lewis, and Billy Joel. Why should I worry? Why should I care? Oliver and Company's $31 million budget was double that of Mouse Detective, presumably because of that voice cast, but it also earned twice what Great Mouse Detective did. The big takeaway here for Eisner and Katzenberg: star power gets attention, especially from adult moviegoers. Howard Ashman, one of the lyricists on Oliver and rising star in the stage world with Little Shop of Horrors, is hired to work on Disney's next two movies, The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. And while these films are obviously financial and critical successes for Disney, a lot of their charm comes from being much more traditional book musicals that are appropriately cast with stage actors. The biggest star in Little Mermaid is a guess, Buddy Hackett. It's a dinglehopper, a penile implant, which means a stick in your dick. And Beauty and the Beast's big Broadway gets Angela Lansbury and Jerry Orbach. He's not whole without a soul to wait upon. Can't believe they got Mrs. Lovett and Baby's dad from Dirty Dancing. But then came Aladdin. 10,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck. Damn. A little sip of Perrier here. I had to stop drinking alcohol because I used to wake up nude and go to me car with me keys in me ass. Robin Williams became famous through his stand-up career, particularly as an improv comedian and his starring role in television's Mork and Mindy. Fly, Be Free. But he initially struggled to translate that success into film. His first major starring role, Robert Altman's 1980 flop Popey, which was partially produced by the Walt Disney Company, was a disaster, which led to a film career slump that lasted throughout the early 80s for Williams. But right around the time of the Eisner ascendancy at Disney came two opportunities for Robin Williams, produced under the Disney umbrella: his darling passion project Good Morning Vietnam and The Dead Poets Society, both of which garnered him Oscar nominations. And then came Hook a couple years later, which finally cemented Robin Williams as an A-list bankable star. But none of these films are so relevant to the story of Aladdin as a charming little polemic by the name of While it seems on paper that this should be the cheap knockoff that was capitalizing on Williams' popularity as the genie, Fern Gully was actually a labor of love that had been in development for years before Aladdin. But it only really got off the ground after Robin Williams was cast in the role of pop culture referencing Bigoted Against Humans, rapping Spat Batty Coda. And believe it or not, Williams was signed on for Fern Gully before he had even been approached for Aladdin. Fern Gully, screenwriter Jim Cox, who had coincidentally worked on the first two screen treatments of Beauty and the Beast, had seen Williams performing at open mix in La Comedy clubs between his two Oscar nods, and wrote the role of Batty specifically around Williams' frenetic energy. Williams agreed to do it, according to Young, because he felt strongly about the actionable green message. So while Fern Gully is going into production, By pure happenstance, we have a nearly mirror situation over at Disney with the film Aladdin. So we have Williams' involvement did not originate with the studio cynically wanting an A-list adult audiences. Williams had every cartoony persona, and he was inspiring to more than one animation studio at the same time. Not only was the part written for him, but they had pitched Aladdin as a Robin Williams vehicle before the actor had even been approached. Said Musker, "Yeah, we wrote to this part with Robin in mind. We didn't know if he would do it. We were totally walking down the plank. If he said no, we were gonna be in big trouble because the whole concept for Aladdin was built around Robin." Williams was hesitant, but was convinced to sign on when Musker and Clements had supervising animator Eric Goldberg create a sample reel of the genie set to one of Williams' old stand-up routines. Williams is said to have laughed his ass off and then signed up immediately, according to Goldberg, and so a deal was struck between Disney and Williams, who agreed to do the voice of the genie at SAG pay scale, about $70,000, with the following caveat. He specifically requested that Disney use his name in 25 or less of the promotional and marketing material for the movie. Part of the reason behind this was because Williams was worried that this would cannibalize the audience for his upcoming film and passion project, Toys, set to be released a few months after Aladdin, which arguably is what happened. But more important for Williams was something of an ethical bent. He also did not want his voice being used to sell merchandise. Said Williams, "I love animation, and Disney is the Rolls-Royce of animation. Well, is I love as the wheels and this L A Z A should and a should Roy should But I told them don't use me voice to sell merchandise, and they agreed to that. When Disney went ahead and used his voice in the marketing, Williams said he felt it was a violation of trust. Williams said, "Don't merchandise me character," to Disney. Initially, Disney stuck to their agreement, albeit in a roundabout way. Here's the initial teaser poster, And there's no mention of Williams or the genie in sight, just this classy backlit lamp. But Disney quickly found a clever interpretation of this 25 of the marketing caveat that really pushed its limits while still being technically within reason. But that was nothing of our broach and agreement compared to we can only surmise why Disney went back on its promise with Williams, but suffice to say that it probably had a lot to do with the fact that he did not back out of being in Fern Gully. I know I am. Studio president Jeffrey Katzenberg, Petty Ashole, legit thought Williams would drop out of Fern Gully to be in the bigger, more prestigious Aladdin. So Katzenberg, Petty Ashole, actively sabotaged Fern Gully. Said Fern Gully writer Deanna Young, "Twice we rented facilities and they gazumped us by paying more. When we found space in the brewery, Disney tried to buy it." One day Katzenberg and 8 or so others marched through to inspect the premises. We scrambled to cover everything up, but it was also really about Robin. According to Jim Cox, Fern Gully's screenwriter, Robin was steaming, "Like it's me voice, you can't stop me." It also didn't help that Williams' own response to Katzenberg's sire was like, "Fuck you, Fern Gully signed me first, I'm rapping the Betty rap." So Disney's like, "Well fuck you right back, we are going to renege on our promise." And thus began the now infamous feud between Williams and the Walt Disney Company, in which Williams was more than happy to start shitting publicly on Disney while they continued to use the genie to make money. Moreover, the moral implications of what his work was being used for irked him. The moral implications for irked what king you The one thing I said was I will do the voice. I'm doing it basically because I want to be part of this animation tradition. I want something for me children. One deal is, I just don't want to sell anything. As in Burger King, as in toys, as in stuff. Not only did they use me voice, they took a character I did and overdubbed it to sell stuff. That was the one thing I said I don't do that. That was the one thing where they crossed the line. A Disney spokesperson lobbed back that they had played completely fair game with Williams, and that they had reputably ran every piece of marketing material across him and his then-wife, Martha Marcia. Said the spokesperson, "We did not use his voice in any way that he did not contractually agree to. He agreed to the deal, and then he made the movie, and then when the movie turned out to be a big hit, he didn't like the deal he had made. After all, UV lied to everyone else. Hey, I was beginning to feel left out. The bridge had been burned, that when even the Golden Globes gave Williams a special award for playing the genie, he gave a 3-minute acceptance speech where he mostly faffed around and mentioned the Disney company not one time, although he did throw some shade at the petty Ashol. I'd like to thank Jeffrey Katzenberg. Eisner attempted to mend bridges with Williams by sending him a Picasso painting, but Williams, asserting some big dick energy, remained unmoved. So, of course, the real dramatic irony here is not that Williams' involvement in Aladdin started the trend of celebrity voice acting as a marketing strategy, which it totally did, but that the fallout was the last thing the man would have wanted. However, for better or worse, lessons were learned from the success of Aladdin. Cynical, cheap lessons. We saw it begin to some degree with The Lion King, and then more with Pocahontas. Mel Gibson was one of the biggest stars in the world at the time. But then after that, starting with the ones that were seriously in production after Aladdin was released, every Disney movie had a genie knockoff featuring some extremely bankable comedic talent. Okay, everybody, move aside, out of me way, best friend coming through. Remember, like a few years ago, every other boy was named Jason and the girls were all named Brittany. But, of course, the most shameless, egregious example comes from, but these examples are just from the Disney side of things. Let us not forget all of the other haters and losers out in the non-Disney animation world who were quick to jump on the same formula. Don Bluth saw not a lot of success in the 90s until Anastasia, which is not only a bold-faced, shameless rip-off of the Disney story formula, but also in how much it crammed in its miscast and blisters and marketed the shit out of it. Meg Ryan is hideously miscast as a plucky 18-year-old amnesiac. What? What? Are you circling? What were you? A vulture in another life. Hank Azaria is our genie. I guess. Ye, ain't that a kick in the head? I guess a curse just ain't what it used to be. Ho, sir. And Christopher Lloyd. I have no feelings whatsoever. Ooh, yeah, that'll be a yikes form dog. But the apogee of this trend of capturing adult interest in children's entertainment by way of celebrity voice talent comes to us at the hands of somebody. Jeffrey Katzenberg, Petty Ashole, finds his biggest post-Disney successes by sniping Disney ideas and being, well, an extremely petty Ashole, with his first shameless rip-off of a Disney project, Ants, featuring uncanny valley nightmare versions of Woody Allen, Sharon Stone, Sylvester Stallone. Whoa, those are some hot tickets in 1998, but mom and dad sure don't know who they are. Call me crazy, but I have a thing about drinking from the anus of another creature. Not only was it rumored that Katzenberg had decided to lift inspiration from the Pixar project then titled Bugs, but also that he browbeat the animation team at to do everything they could to make sure it hit theaters before a Bug's Life did. Petty Ashole. Right after that we had the Prince of Egypt, pulling a favor from every famous person in Hollywood. Whoa, Hal Kilmer is just, he really loves playing Moses. How can this be? How can this be? And then somebody, you. I get that you love Shrek, but it is an extremely petty Ashole movie. From its cheap, shallow digs at Disney. Shallow digs as it is snave. Too long is a perfect place. To its totally not Michael Eisner inspired villain, to its shameless pop culture references, to a celebrity-driven marketing campaign that makes Aladdin look downright subtle. And joining DreamWorks were the knockoffs, which haunt us to this day. Woof. Of course there, Illumination Animation, and even further down the totem pole, Sony Pictures Animation, with even cheaper, shittier movies. Most of the time, you have the one exception, like incredibly cheap. Probably more than half the budget goes to the voice actors. Like, what the hell is this Stu what? How did that get Oprah? By the time Lilo and Stitch rolled around, there seemed to be a return to form in which Disney was casting based on roles, as opposed to writing roles for a celebrity. And ever since Disney's animation studio got back on track, let's say starting with Tangled, the company's more or less fallen back into the spirit it originally started from. Both Disney's animation studio and Pixar produce roughly one film a year, and while they don't necessarily want for lack of well-known talent, casting is less of a gimmick to get asses in seats, and more of a creative choice that plays to the strength of the character and the actor inhabiting the role, whether they be super famous or not. And may I add, I love your dress. It's adorable. Oh, this old thing. Thank you so much. I love the way it twirls. Oh, thank you, Joy. Thank you, Joy. But hey, Disney now totally owns Blue Sky Animation after the 20th Century Fox merger. So they own shit, like Epic now, with its Aziz Ansari slug. Boom. Right here. Biggest in the merch. Hey, if you can't beat him, buy him. But hey, I think we're forgetting the most important question. What about Return of Jafar? Oh, she dances. Was the big feud the reason Williams was not in beloved direct-to-video classic, The Return of Jafar? Yeah, it was. Pretty much. You saw the whole world already. It's a small world after all. Williams declined to reprise the role of the genie in the not good and quite bad direct-to-video sequel, itself the spark for another long, sad trend that would last more than a decade and we're not going to get into right now. This is no angle. It's the shadow of a monster. Not because he thought a sequel was necessarily beneath him, but because he was still furious about the way that Disney handled Aladdin. So Disney went ahead and made it and replaced Robin Williams with Homer Simpson. He's big. He's blue. He's back. That was probably also the reason why they didn't bother giving that movie a budget or making it look like not ass. Steal from us again, and your squirmy body will be dinner for the jackal. But in the end, the feud was mended not by money or Picassos, but by sincerity, or at least the public performance of sincerity. And, of course, by firing the petty Ashol. Joe Roth, Jeffrey Katzenberg's successor as studio chief, issued a public heartfelt apology on the debacle, saying, "They are simply about principle." And with peace reinstated, Williams went on to voice the genie in other projects. Oh, come on, enough of this dark past. Let's roll out something a little new, including the slightly less shitty threequel. And boy, did Disney want you to know that he was back. I am back, including the genie, brought to life again by the one and only Robin Williams. It's a kinder, gentler genie. Look at it. I mean, of course they did. Williams was decidedly not paid scale this time around, netting a cool $1 million for reprising his role. After that, Williams did reprise the role of the genie a smattering of times, but only in educational content. Great minds think for themselves, especially when it comes to Jackie Robinson, along with starring in other Disney-produced films such as Jack and Bicentennial Man. It's scary. It's not scary, it's stupid. Well, it was through a Disney subsidiary that he did eventually get his Oscar for Good Will Hunting through Disney-owned Miramax, which of course was owned by Bob and Harvey. What? God damn it. You could argue that Disney's attempts to replicate the success of the genie, while they might have been lucrative for the company, were hollow imitations that missed what worked about the part. I'm losing to a bird. that it was molded for Robin, that the role and the actor shaped one another, and that a magical entity was the perfect animated vehicle for his frenetic, pop culture-laden stand-up style. So Danny DeVito as a satyr saying he has a fur wedgie, I got a fur wedgie, or Jason Alexander losing to a bird, I'm losing to a bird. It just doesn't jive in the same way. Having Jason Alexander do bad 14th century improve about how he wants Tofga goat is just such a shoddy attempt to recapture the magic of the genie, because it misses what made the genie work in the first place. All joking aside, you really ought to be yourself. Musker and Clemens wanted Williams not because he was famous, but because his persona was the inspiration for the part. And on some level with art, people can tell when inspiration comes from a genuine place of sincerity, rather than a place of corporate cynicism. And Oprah Winfrey. And while that's not to say that Disney has never been able to replicate that kind of performance with an A-list celebrity since, there is a reason why Robin Williams' turn as the genie still sticks with us after almost 30 years, and will most likely remain untarnished by a legacy of soulless, cash-grabbing messes. Genie isn't beloved because Aladdin was successful. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about pop culture references. And it wasn't because our animal brains go, oh hey, it's Mork. It's heart. Animation is something so wonderful about a cartoon that you can sit with your child and just laugh like crazy. Especially like the old Warner Brothers cartoons, and that's what Aladdin was. It's basically a Warner Brothers cartoon in Disney drag. Let's make some magic. But you think in 100 years, 200 years' time, that your great-great-grandchildren are going to be watching that movie. But I want to do interesting films, work with interesting people, and it's something that has an effect, and kind of has a half-life. I am free. I am free. Because you get to a certain point and you say, what are you leaving behind? And if it's movies like this, I say great. Genie, I'm going to miss you. Me too. All. No matter what anybody says. You will always be a Prince tune. You will always be a Prince tune.